Hello everyone, I'm Ben Contreras, and welcome back to another episode of Ben Talks About. Now, I've talked quite a bit about anime on this channel, and if we definitely want to talk about an anime series that has definitely gotten extremely popular in these past coming years, one of the biggest examples, in my personal opinion, and probably many others' opinion, is My Hero Academia. Of course, many people who probably aren't even fans of anime to begin with have at least heard of this show in some form or another. You know, it's gained quite a cult following, and naturally it would make sense for there to be a video game based on the franchise. And of course that is our topic for today's video, the My Hero One's Justice, which is also available on a bunch of other consoles. It's just that I got the Nintendo Switch version because it's just the version I opted for. Now, overall, I definitely gotta say, while this is a relatively fun game, it's definitely not the kind of game that is overly competitive or really as strategic as other fighters that have come out recently. This is definitely like a few other anime adaptations that are made in the fighting games. It's not really meant to be the kind of thing that would be seen in like tournaments all across like the world and all that kind of stuff. It's really just for people who are big fans of the franchise itself, which I think this game does well on to a certain degree. There are, however, several aspects of the game which seems like should have been available, but in fact weren't until much later, or just haven't been made into a thing at all. And one of the biggest examples, I feel like, is the very lackluster mode that is the story mode for this game. For those of you who don't know, the series My Hero Academia takes place in this world where almost a majority of the population are born with these semi-superpowers called quirks. And almost every person who has a quirk has one exclusively unique to them, which, you know, is a cool concept for, you know, this kind of game, but in terms of how much of the series they cover, they for some odd reason start off in the middle of the second season. So an entire like third of the beginning of the franchise is basically completely ignored except for a short like narration by our main protagonist, Deku, over here on the right side of the box, and it feels like that's kind of disappointing. Like it's pretty much guaranteed that if you're planning to get this game, you're already fully aware of the My Hero Academia world, because this is definitely not the place you want to start in if you're planning on getting into the franchise. It doesn't really do that good of a job introducing all the characters and all of that. And the overall presentation of the story mode feels a bit lackluster. Like, the way it works is that you get a specific mission where you play as a specific character and you have a specific opponent that you have to fight, and before each fight there's a short like almost like comic strip looking cutscene that shows the, you know, what would normally happen if you saw the show. And then afterwards they fight, they have the ending comic strip, and then that's the end of that. It's on to the next mission. And it just feels like that's sort of, I guess, lackluster to an extent. And there are even some missions that are literally just like a 1 minute long cutscene. And by cutscene, I mean nothing but the comic strips you would see before and after a fight, which feels like they have absolutely no purpose at all. Like, those really could have just been part of the cutscenes for the actual fighting missions in the game. But yeah, the overall story mode as a whole is very short, and while they did add a mode where you're able to play as the villains, I personally haven't gone through that very much yet, because I'm just not a really big fan of the way they portrayed the story mode. But in terms of the actual fighting mechanics, you know, the reason why people play fighting games to begin with, how does it actually like work? Well, like I said, it is definitely fun, but it is definitely a game for fans of the series and not something that could be really competitive and take like several like years of your life to learn. Basically, the way it works is that you have one single button for normal attacks, and then you have two buttons on the top here, which are for your, well, special attacks, which you can then combine together with one of these shoulder buttons to make an even stronger attack. And that's basically all you get. You're also able to select two assist characters, where when you press one of the shoulder buttons, you're able to summon one of them, and they do a specific attack catered to that character. Similar to something you would see in other fighting games like the Capcom vs. series, or other games that are like that. But in terms of the mechanics, that's really it. You're basically using one normal combo the entire game, and then occasionally doing special attacks to make your characters do a bunch of cool stuff. Which, while it works, it's definitely lacking in some variety that even other anime fighting games, like most notably the Dragon Ball Xenoverse games, where it feels like you have several different options for different characters, because all of them have all sorts of different abilities they have throughout the series that can be used and customized with their older attacks, which make them feel a bit more unique from one another. Now, the My Hero Academia franchise is definitely not the kind of one that would work if they had a mechanic that was kind of like the one you see in in Dragon Ball Xenoverse, because each character has attacks that are specifically catered towards them, because all of them have very unique quirks. It's not really something like in Dragon Ball where each character has a certain set of predetermined normal attacks that anyone could learn, and they could just copy it on top of one on another character. Meanwhile, each character also has specific attacks catered towards them along with that. And while I can understand why the mechanics are overall so simple, it definitely makes the game feel like it's a bit more repetitive if you're not, say, playing with a friend. If you're doing stuff like the arcade mode that they added, or the mission mode, or the lackluster story mode, it can definitely get very monotonous, because it feels like you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. Now, in terms of the rest of the content that's in the game, there definitely is quite a lot of variety in the characters themselves. You have, a majority of the major characters from the My Hero Academia series, but it definitely feels like, I'm pretty sure a lot of people have probably mentioned this about this game, but the roster feels like it's lacking in quite a couple of characters. Some of the major students from the series aren't present in the game normally, and in terms of the villain characters, there's not that. As you can see, the amount of heroes in the game definitely dwarf over the amount of villains, which I feel like is sort of a thing in fighting games. But the My Hero Academia series, especially how it is now with the long manga series and the anime, which has 3 seasons at this point, there could have been a lot more variety in terms of characters you can add, especially when it comes to the villains. There's almost a new villain basically every single season, so I'm not sure if they're going to eventually add that as a DLC thing or anything like that, but if they do, then it feels like the game will be a bit more worth your time and money once it gets to that point. But overall, the roster is definitely good enough. And one sort of thing that I want to mention is the customization you can have on characters. Whenever you do a match in let's say story mode, for example, you're constantly getting money, and that money can be used to purchase things like alternate colors for the character, which you can then mix and match with costume parts from other characters, and basically create a weird hodgepodge of a costume for a specific character, which is a cool idea, I feel on paper, but when you see characters let's say Deku, for example, having let's say Bakugo's arm grenade cannon things, it just looks kind of odd, but also kind of funny at the same time, due to the sort of context in the show. But in terms of what they have, I think that's a pretty cool idea. I just feel like if they added even more like options for characters, and allow us to just be able to buy them in the store with just the money instead of having to go through certain missions in story mode in order for them to become available to you for you to buy. You're already like going through these matches over and over just to get the money. You shouldn't have to wait to unlock the item in order to buy it just to have this one specific thing. Which, and overall, I think it's a cool idea, but again, I just think that the phrase, like, it could be expanded on, is basically the best way to summarize this game. It's good at its base level, but if they, expanded it with, more characters, more options, and all that stuff, I feel like the game could be much more worth, a real retail price, you could say. But as of right now, you're definitely better off waiting for a price drop on this. Now, if you are a fan of the My Hero Academia series, and you haven't picked up the game yet, I do think I'd still recommend it. It's still a fun game, especially if you're a fan of the franchise itself. But if you're looking for an actual, like, fighting game that feels like there's a lot more variety and is more worthwhile, I feel like you're better off getting something like the Dragon Ball Xenoverse games. Like, those games are like overloaded with, unlockables and all that, which I think would make those games a bit more worthwhile. But I still had fun with this game, and I think it was, for me personally, it was definitely worth it. So I hope you all enjoyed me talking about this this game. It's been quite a while since I've looked at a video game on this channel, actually. So hopefully I'll be able to do more of that kind of stuff in the future. And until I see you all next time, I'm Ben Contreras, and bye.